Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Board of Finance regularly scheduled meeting of Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. The time is now 7 p.m. and we will begin our meeting with delegations. I see that we have 3 attendees, Cindy Lee, Fred Santoro, and Timothy Hagan. If one of you would like to speak, can you please raise your hand or unmute yourself and let me know?
Camille, I'm Cindy Lee. This is Peter, using my wife's computer.
Okay.
I don't
let
see
me let me rename you.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 minute, folks. I'm renaming one of our board members, and I will bring him in as a panelist.
Now I understand what the problem is. Okay,
there he is. Hi, Peter. Okay, just backing up a second. So Karen Smitrik, everybody's present except for Ann Shichello. She's not with us this evening. Okay, if Fred or Timothy would like to speak, yes. I think Tim has his hand up, Dr. Hagan. I'm just going to pull him in. Hi, Tim, can you hear us? So I think you had your hand up to speak during delegations.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just want to tell everybody that I got my vaccination shot today.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Moderna or Pfizer?
But Moderna.
Oh, you'll take what you can get, right?
Yep.
Did you get the first one or the second one?
The first one.
Very good.
Thanks.
Very good.
So,
going.
I just got my second one this afternoon.
Oh, awesome.
Getting my second one Saturday.
Saturday.
Pfizer.
Make sure you tell Tim that.
Tim.
Now I hear they're saying that the Pfizer vaccination is 75% effective after the first dose.
That's right.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. So that's all good news. Hopefully it'll come around and be rolled out a little bit more widely sooner rather than later. Okay, so there are no delegations tonight then. Let's move on to the minutes from the regular meeting of December 9th. Did anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about those minutes? If not, can I please have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting minutes of Wednesday, December 9th, 2020.
Thanks, Ann Santoro. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Rich Steele. Very good. Although, any further discussion, questions, comments? Okay, seeing no hands. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Let's move on to reports. So we have Mariana Stevens, and we have Jeff Newton and Timothy Hagan tonight from Board of Ed. Jeff, would you like to kick this report off?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. At the rate we're going, I'll probably have my vaccination shot by September. So hopefully sooner, but we're keeping our fingers crossed. So 2 things. I want to just give you an update on the projected expenditures, COVID expenditures. But first, just a quick update. We had sent a letter out to all parents today, and we are going to be starting to phase our students back in. So long story short, all of our K-4 students will be back in by the end of March. We're phasing them in. And our middle school, we're going to be, it's not public yet, we're going to be announcing that, but a relatively similar timeline. So we're excited about that. Cases are decreasing, although we're still sending them out, daily. We're still having them daily, but they're decreasing across the region, which is a good thing. We've had 3 weeks of solid trend data of a decline in cases in southeastern Connecticut per Ledgelight. So that's great news. And hopefully this variant and the strains will not expand any further than they have, and we'll be in good shape and get our kids back for a normal school end of the school year, April, May, June, somewhere in that time frame. So that's kind of a quick update on the where we're at with returning our students. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen for a minute, and I'll want to give you a snapshot of our COVID expenditures. Everyone see that okay? I can't see you. Do I have a head? Okay, I can make this a little bit bigger too if that helps. Is that better? Okay, all right, I see some heads nodding. Okay, so what we did was Mariana and I, we just took the categories so we could show you the differentials that have changed since the last time. We came and we shared some of this information out and the totals at the bottom, but total estimated, the PPE equipment, as you can see, this number is starting to go up. It will probably go up more because with returning students, we are in the need of additional plexiglass. Most likely, every desk is going to have plexiglass on it in every classroom. So we're going to need to be purchasing that plexiglass. We've already, started to roll that out. So you're going to start to see, those costs, will go up. I'm not anticipating anything too high. Mariana, I think we've got an estimate from Crystal, and I think wasn't it about 25 to 30,000 roughly? Was the number we're looking at total if we needed at the top end?
Yeah, so I think that 75,000 that's in there, I think it will be more than enough. He and I talked about it. So I don't think, we'll need more than that. We're just leaving the buffer there because he may need some gloves and some other items that he had mentioned today, like more child-sized masks and things like that.
Thanks. Total estimated, other supplies, we're pretty much the point where, we're not needing, to purchase other supplies. That's going down. So there's, the monthly allowance, Mariana, is just decreasing, by $1,000 each month. So that's a good thing. Instructional supplies, though, are up some. We talk about bringing students back as well. The sharing of materials, from the start, it's been discouraged for students to be sharing materials. So we've ended up having to purchase, doubles of things. Kids have taken things home that are replicated in the classroom. So they've been using, but we're feeling the need that we're starting to see the need to purchase some additional instructional supplies to lessen the contact on things with students. We're going to be cohorted, especially when they return, same classrooms, trying to stay with that same group all day long and not touching each other's things and instructional supplies. So a little bit up there. Transportation. Yeah.
Yeah, for your third and fourth column, the headers are the same, but sometimes the numbers are a little bit different.
I just noticed it. My apologies. That should say February 2021, the third.
Oh, okay, that's what I figured.
Thank you. I'm sorry
Thanks.
about that.
Good catch, Rich. Thanks. Sorry about that. All right.
No worries.
Total transportation. So transportation continues to decline. We're finding, we're not needing, as much money. We will now start to use buses 5 days a week in the weeks ahead. So, we'll be back to, a normal schedule with busing, and but we have had some ongoing savings there. Contracted services, flat. Personnel. Now, personnel is something that, has continually gone up over the course of the year. It's again, mainly, we said it before, mainly because of that virtual, the virtual program. So at the elementary level, remember it has its own teachers, its own paraprofessionals, its own staff. It's almost like its own little school. I shouldn't say little because it's quite large. But some of those classes have upwards of 30 students. Much easier to have higher class sizes virtually. But as they've continued to have grown, and we'll see what happens with, now we're saying we're bringing back students, we're going to see, and we've got a survey out that just went out today to parents to see are there going to be other further parents that are going to want to say, not for me, the hybrid's been working, I don't want to be back full, I'm going to now send my child, to the virtual program. So that could happen. So that's what we're trying to gauge that. But personnel for some additional support, para support, that number's up. Special education continues to go down. Mariana, have you, Kim Davis, really, there hasn't been much change there. I haven't heard much at all about special education. Just it
No.
continues to go down at this point with COVID expenses.
It does. Again, there was, the 80,000 is an actual, the other one was kind of an allowance. So that's slowly, just as each month goes by and we don't use it, I decrease that allowance. And Kim isn't anticipating, anything extraordinary.
Okay. And then, we started off, we had $100,000 earmarked for unanticipated expenses, estimated expenses. We've dropped that. We're now down, you see, to the 70,000. We think, and Mariana, correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to continue to go down, hopefully to zero.
Correct.
So I think that's going to continue to help us because we're not seeing the need for any other unanticipated expenses that are coming forth, especially being that we're now closing in on March. And then, so total projected expenditures were down almost 9,000, which is a good thing as it pertains to the COVID expenses. We showed you the ESSER and the GEAR, the grant funds. We have used some of the ESSER funds, and we have all of this money in full, the GEAR funds. So we're in the process of drawing down and utilizing those dollar amounts, which totaled the 466,395. So we're sitting at currently projected an overage of 898,000. You might have heard, we just recently received word that we're getting a second round of grant funding, which is excellent, $761,066. So that's earmarked for the next 2 years it can be used. And we were on a webinar recently, and they talked about parameters for what that that funding can be used for, specifically academic recovery and learning loss, like summer programs. So we plan to run a more robust summer program this coming summer. Remote learning, if necessary next year, there is the chance that we might have to continue to run a remote or virtual program next year and have that as an option for students. I'm hoping not, but it very well could come to fruition, and that would be a cost. So those dollars could be appropriated for that. Additional tech support or upgrades as necessary. We're in pretty good shape, but there's always the need for upgrading things. And then PD for staff when it comes to utilizing technology and so forth, and other components as it pertains to the virtual learning and if we have to continue virtual learning. So we've talked a couple times with you about potentially coming back to request the 500,000 that we gave back at the end of last year in an appropriation. And we talked timelines, and we were looking at like maybe February or March. I'll tell you what, I would highly recommend that, and Mariana and I have had some discussions. We've talked with our Facilities, Finance, and Operations Committee of the board. We feel like we should wait and hold off. The numbers, of need keep going down, which is a good thing, the COVID expenses. So I'm hopeful that, if we needed to come for a special appropriation of that 500,000, it wouldn't be any more than that 500,000, and I'm hoping it's going to be less. So I think, I was very nervous back, 2 or 3 months ago, thinking, we were talking, maybe we need to come and ask for that 500,000 first in February, March, and then potentially another appropriation later on. We're feeling like we're in much better shape. And hopefully we'll just have to come to you, and we can talk process, and we can talk with the Board of Ed as well, obviously, but potentially the 500,000, and again, hopefully less. That's our goal. So I'll stop there. I'm sure, hopefully you heard about that additional grant funding. I think with the Biden administration too, I've heard there could be more money and more funding coming, which would be good. And I don't know if anybody heard about ECS. We just found out, I think it was today, about ECS funding, that it is going to remain the same. Correct, Mariana? From what I heard for next year at least, and potentially 2 years.
Yeah, the governor's proposed is leaving it the same. So
that would be over $6 million that would be coming to the town of East Lyme. So rather than what it was supposed to drop down to, I think it was about 5.8 million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like a lot of good news. Again, there's obviously some dollars and some costs there, but we continue to maintain our budget freeze. Now, having all kids, back in the building, we'll probably get back to some normalcy, with some budgeting as we look at the rest of the year. But hopefully, as we continue discussions, we'll be, potentially coming to you later on in the year for potentially a smaller, appropriation, we hope. Any questions? That's a lot. Sorry, I kind of, ran through that fast, but any specific questions that you have regarding that?
I do have just a couple of questions. So the $761,000 grant, you're saying when that comes, that's to be used over the next 2 budget years, if I heard correctly?
Yes, it's a drawdown, Camille. So we have to go and get what we want to utilize. They don't just give us all the money at once, but it's a drawdown.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's available
You spend
to us
first
for,
and then you get reimbursed. And do you have any sense of the timing of that? Is that something that's available right away, or is that something that's available a couple months from now?
No, not right away. I don't remember hearing a timeline, Mariana. Did you on that web? I don't think they've given that
No.
information yet.
The application isn't out yet. They didn't really give us a timeline as to when it would be available for us to apply for it. They just kind of gave us a little overview of what we can use it for.
So the shortfall of almost $500,000, you're able to weather that for a couple of more months before coming for another appropriation to pay your bills?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. And again, hopefully, if and when we do need to, it will be less than that 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just a final question, if you don't mind. I know Jackie Cerezi. She usually sends us these reports. If she could just pass those along to me again, and I'll get it out to our team.
Absolutely.
Great.
Read my mind. Yep.
Anybody else with the corrections that Rich Steele pointed out?
Yeah,
Great.
definitely.
Anybody have any questions for the superintendent?
I just have one. Yeah. Jeff, so I watched some of your meeting Monday evening on YouTube. That was good. And I got through, I know it's a 3-hour meeting. I got through like an hour plus, but we'll go back for the rest, I guess. But I'm just wondering, the topic of the high school came up and its schedule for openings. So, I mean, I know this short amount of time has passed between your Monday night meeting and this one, but what are your thoughts on the high school? Because it's more complicated with the size and so forth.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've gotten it. Quite a few individuals are asking. It's our toughest animal to figure out, and we have started discussions on it. We're trying to brainstorm and also brainstorm regionally, because what you're going to see now is the other towns, Waterford, Ledyard, Montville, they're all going to start to follow behind us with reopening. So we're having those discussions of how could we effectively potentially do the high school. The biggest challenge is the cafeteria. You've got 1,000 kids with masks off trying to eat. There's no way to socially distance in the space. So we were thinking, well, maybe could we use the north gym, the south gym, and the cafeteria all as, eating spaces sort of thing. So just trying to brainstorm different ideas and methods of doing it, maybe, flip-flopping days of when students come back. So we're in the midst of that's our next challenge. We just are wrapping up our plans for the middle school, and we'll roll that out next week or the week after. And then we'll be rolling out some thoughts about the high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
What are the high schools that are closest in size to you? I mean, you use as a
closest to us would Waterford is probably the closest. Then you go down further to like Guilford, Madison, down that way. Old Sabre, Clinton, Westbrook, they're all Old Lyme. They're all very small. Like in comparison, we often get compared to Old Lyme. Old Lyme's been in full. Their high school's in full. Well, Old Lyme's high school has, I think around 300 to 350 students. And many of them are remote too. So it lessens, the total number. We're over, over 1,000 or right at that 1,000 mark. So it's very tough to compare. It's apples and oranges sort of thing. But those are the schools we want to talk to, though, the districts that have the same size as us. Look to kind of our DIRG and see, how are they doing it? What are they doing? And what can we copy or replicate? No sense in reinventing the wheel if something's working and we could do it.
Right.
So we need our kids back. We're trying.
Sounds good. I think, not to belabor the point, but I did read something recently about a lot of outdoor eating happening.
Exactly.
File
Tents,
out of
yeah.
schools.
Yep. Yeah, the warm weather hopefully is coming. Keep our fingers crossed, but absolutely, utilizing the outdoor spaces is another factor in this. And PE can be outdoors too. I know we have to deal with when it rains, but there's where we could potentially use gym spaces if necessary, or we push specials in. That's the other big question we're asking, even at the elementary level. For cohorting purposes, question is, do you want to leave all the students in if you got a third grade class, does that class just stay together all day long, just them in the same room, where your PE, your art, your music teacher, they all push into the classroom. They might even eat in the classroom. So, that's kind of tough on kids because they don't leave the room. So we're leaning more towards still trying to do what we've been doing in the hybrid model, allowing them to go out and go to the cafeteria and go to art and go to music. But, when you fill up a building, those are the concerns that many staff have. So that's what we're trying to work through.
Okay. Cool. Sounds good. Good luck with that. It'll be tough.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're working and trying to keep staff, content with this as well. It's very challenging on them. They're very nervous. Many don't have the vaccination yet. Some are starting to get it. So we tried to kind of time it with that as well, but we'll see.
Sounds good.
Jeff,
Yeah.
you mentioned lunch is probably the most challenging thing for the high school, and the high school still currently has just everybody eats lunch at the same time?
They do. In the hybrid model, we're allowed to keep 6 feet apart. We've got plexiglass on every table. So we've got the distancing that's recommended through the CDC. So the mask can be down while they're eating. They're not allowed to sit on the same side and talk. They have to be on the opposite side of the plexiglass, talking
Right.
through it.
Right.
So, which
I
frustrates them.
was just thinking one thing that could be looked at if lunch is such a major issue is instead of having the whole community eat lunch at one time, have it at different periods and schedule it that way to bring everybody back.
Yeah, we've currently have 3 lunch waves going on right now. We used to have they all ate at once, but
Right.
this year we implemented 3 lunch periods.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But good thoughts. We're looking for them all. And one other idea, came up. Well, you know what? Maybe what if we had, the high school schedule went from 7:30 in the morning until 1 o'clock, or where it was more of like a longer half day schedule. So you eliminate lunch, you get all your classes in, but lunch is not in the picture. But so those are the brainstorming. The total number of hours required by the state factors in, and there's just a number of red tape that comes up with each decision we're looking
Right.
at or trying to make.
Well, thanks for your efforts.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. It's been a year, but we're getting there. So we just want our kids back.
Okay, any other questions for the Board of Ed members? Okay, thank you all very much for the update, and good luck moving forward.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We'll keep you posted.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night. With that, we'll move over to the first selectman's report.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to try to do my part in keeping this meeting a short one as requested by the chair. I'm not sure at this stage you're going to get your hour meeting, but I'll do my part. I got nothing but good news tonight. Governor Lamont delivered his budget plans. You heard bits and pieces of it already. Basically, town funding is being kept level. In fact, there's a few dollars that are being added in, and that is some of that extra Board of Ed COVID money coming, and that's been added on top. That kind of counts as state aid. And the other good news is we were anticipating, as you remember, if you've been around for a while, that the ECS was supposed to step down as far as support from the state, and they've kept that level for the next 2 years. And frozen at that same spot. So where the budget anticipates us losing to over $200,000, currently Governor Lamont's budget holds it steady. Of course, there's a legislative agenda. So they eventually passed the budget. So there's always that in play. And what also is in play is, unfunded mandates that can be brought to a town's budget bottom line that we might not be anticipating. One thing that happened last year, and is baked into the budget this year when you receive it in about a month, is the police accountability. That's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in time. It's a good, listen, I'm not arguing it's a bad thing, but the cost of it is being borne on the property taxes of municipalities. So we have to watch for that. And we'll go through a full explanation when we go over the budget. But good news on the budget today. The grand list, good news. You'll hear more about that, I think, when you get into your budget discussions. But our budget, our grand list rose 2.14%. It's the highest it's been in maybe almost 20 years. That's a big increase for 1 year. And Diane Vitagliano, our assessor, will make a presentation to you folks when we get into budget season. That's a big number, and that's going to help us out a lot with the economy the way it is, and always our pressure to keep tax rates as low as possible. We already heard from several tonight, so I won't belabor it, but the COVID vaccine is starting to hit for the people who are 65 and over now. That started a day or two ago, and already 2 or 3 members in this Brady Bunch panel here have received their first or second shot. That's wonderful. The Niantic Bridge project is nearing an end, and that's been 18 months already, and maybe longer, and it's nearing an end. It's not over, but it's nearing an end. That's the good news. There's a slight bad news event with that, and that is they have to close the bridge to all traffic for a 2-week period of time, starting about mid-March, and we'll be putting PSAs out there and big announcements. But people in the southern part of town use that bridge quite often to travel the shoreline, and that bridge will be shut down. The detour is up and around, and obviously that plays that's a big concern for our EMTs, our ambulances, who will have to make the long trek around to bring someone to the hospital. So we'll be working with the DOT contractor, but the bottom line is that bridge will be shut down. Lastly, we have good to report. I don't know of any one single incident in the 11 months that we've been dealing with COVID where some town hall employee has given it to another town hall employee. We have had plenty of COVID incidences, and Becky, our HR person, is busy constantly with this, as am I. But what we're doing is we're social distancing, and we're insisting on wearing masks, and we've kept the buildings closed to prevent the spread, and it's working. It's working. People have been to work and then find out a day later that they have COVID, they have symptoms that kick in, and we immediately go into our protocol. That's the good news. And we'll continue those protocols. The town hall buildings are still closed. By appointment only. Contractors that need to come down and talk to the building department can still do that. Town assessor, the clerk's office still has people in there, but it's by appointment or people calling in and saying, bring me in and escort me out. And that's been working very well. Our library is very busy with curbside pickup and drop off. So that's all I have. I wanted to keep it short tonight, as I always try to do. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for the first selectman? Okay, I don't see any hands, Mark. Thank you for the update. That is indeed all good news.
Yeah, we have 2 department heads and maybe a third one joining us tonight for the bulk of your meeting. So these guys are stepping up to make sure that you have all your questions answered on the new business items.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, we'll move on to the finance director, Anna Johnson.
Oh, good evening. So I'll talk a little bit about the budget summary report that was included in your packages. So as you know, January was when we have the collections for the second half of the real estate taxes. We took in just about $15.9 million in January and current year taxes. Our revenues year to date year over year, about just about the same dollar amount, but our percentage is a little bit lower this year. And our taxes year to date are showing a little bit lower than they were this year, at the end of January. The investment revenues have really taken a nosedive. The rates are, just really not so good this year. On the expenditure side, we're a little bit lower overall year to date. We did receive one of the installments of the education cost share grant in January, as we did the second half of the town aid road. And we are continuing to get the Board of Ed tuitions monthly. Our building permits and conveyance taxes are, they're still staying, rather good on a monthly basis. So those were all good things. In January, we had some interest payment due on some of our bonds. And then we made the annual required contribution to the defined benefit pension plan. We did make a payment out of the retirement liability account, as we had someone leave the town's employment and we had to do a payoff. And then I've highlighted some of the public safety various overtime accounts for you. So that's kind of like a highlight of everything. In terms of the operating budget, where I'm focusing on monthly is keeping an eye on all the public safety area overtime accounts. And of course, for the fire departments, they're part-time accounts. So kind of watching them closely to keep an eye on them. I checked, so for the snow incident that we had over the weekend, the overtime payout for that is $17,229. That'll be that's in our payroll this week. So, Joe Burgaw had sent Mark and I a note today saying that, with this last snowstorm, he's probably going to need to do a transfer into that account. But he does have some wiggle room in his regular salary account, so we'll be able to handle that within the budget. Then today I sent you via email projected fund balance report. And, it looks like we're going to be able to grow it by, about 300,000 this year. Not as good as it has been for the last 2 years, but into that I have factored that $890,000 that the Board of Ed is talking about spending. So that's what's bringing that number down. One thing I want to point out is the revenue report that I sent you out with the fund balance report. That is a snapshot of what our revenues are today, and then a projection of what they'll be February 1st through the end of the year. So it's looking like we're going to need to use about $185,000 of that applied fund balance to this year's budget, returning about $716,000 of it, which is actually $226,000 to the good of what it was last month. So, another month has gone by, and just kind of looking at where we are and, where we think we might be. So I mean, that's a good thing, because we kind of like turned the corner, turn the corner good on that. So when I kind of worked it out, I was rather pleased about that, because the prior months, it was a little bit less. And when I did like a comparison on, the excess number changes, it's really just a little bit in various accounts. that have, impacted this positive change. But a couple of accounts, the landfill fees and the zoning fees, they were a little bit more than last month than, any of the others were. So, a little bit positive. Again, I want to be cautiously optimistic, as we look at this every month, and for the last 2 months, it's been a little bit less. We were using a little bit more of the fund balance, and with this last month, we had a little bit of a positive change. So that that's a good thing.
Does anybody have any questions for Anna?
Oh, and just one other thing. So I just kind of to do a little bit of talking points on the municipal CRF funds. So back in November, we had received $36,795, and that was based on COVID expenditures that we made from March 1st through June 30th of 2020. In other words, for last fiscal year. In order to get those funds, we had to do a very tedious and detailed, request. We had to do expenditure by expenditure. And then it was, I don't know, sometime in October-ish, the state came out with a plan to just say, okay, you're not going to have to apply for, like on the detailed expenditure basis, we're going to allocate the remainder of the funds. You need to, submit your application. And for the town of East Lyme, that was $132,393. So in all, we received $169,188 in those relief funds. So of that $132,000, I've allocated $68,887 to date, and that's a combination of COVID-related expenditures that were, in our general fund operating budget, as well as water and sewer operations. Some of it was, there was an expense they made COVID-related out of the Parahus fund, so I reimbursed that fund. The Park and Rec Special Revenue Fund and the Record Preservation Fund that the town clerk has, as well as in the elementary school building project fund. They spent about $32 for a Zoom account to hold their meetings virtually, so I reimbursed that fund. So with that said, we have about $68,500 remaining that can be allocated towards any expenditures that are COVID related, and we have until the end of 2021 calendar year to use those funds. So, I just thought I would point that out. And additionally, there were some funds through the CARES Act made available to senior centers. So our Kathy Wilson applied. We received $2,500, and with that, we purchased a faucet, a touchless faucet for the ladies' room in the senior center, as well as a touchless water bubble tank. So those, that was kind of, those are kind of good things. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, Anna, I just had a couple of quick questions for you. On the unassigned fund balance report that you sent to us, the return that you're mentioning of 300 and the increase of 305,000, that could be eliminated, right? If the Board of Ed comes back to us with an additional appropriation request, right, for COVID expenses?
No, because when I did the analysis, I included that additional $890,000 that the Board of Ed is disclosing that they're going to expend above their budget.
$800,000 was included in this analysis?
Right.
So that was before they got the 2 grants, which brings it down to 466.
No, their grants, their overexpend is 1.3 million, if I remember correctly, and then they net out those grants, so it brings it down to about 890,000.
Right, right. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But you did take into consideration the overage there.
Yeah. So if you look at like our adopted budget is 76,191,000. So if you look at the expenses, it shows 76.7 million. So that's part of the reason, because I'm including that additional 890,000 that the Board of Ed, may spend this year. And then what the other thing is, on the town side, I'm estimating that we're going to have about $500,000 of our budget left that we won't be expending. And what I did is I went back the last 5 years. I looked at what we had left, and 3 out of the 5 years all clustered around that $500,000 point. So I did an average of those years. I also looked at what we expended last year in the months of February through June, and to try to use different little analysis to come up with what I can what I estimate we'll have left at the end of the year.
Okay.
So that's all I have.
Okay. That's really all the general questions I have. I have some specific ones for the appropriation request coming up. Does anybody have any questions for Anna, or should we move on to new business? Okay.
I have one. Sorry, Camille. I just had one. Anna, when you and I spoke about the CFR funding, coronavirus relief funding recently, you mentioned how you're actually accounting for it. So did you want to share that little bit of information?
Yes.
So when I talked about having allocated the $63,887, what I did is any budget account that expended specific COVID expenses, I reimbursed that account for the dollars that were expended with these grant funds. So it looks like it makes it a wash. So we spent the money, we received a reimbursement from the state, so it was like an in and an out for those COVID-related expenditures. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. I think I just wanted to mention too that the board members can also go to, I can provide the website, but it's basically the Office of Policy and Management, will keep you reasonably apprised. It's not a difficult site to negotiate, and you can look under coronavirus funding and just to get a clue about, what's happening and disbursement and so forth. So that just sort of keeps you in the loop. But thank you, Anna, for all the information and keeping us updated. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ann. With that, let's move on to new business. First up is a special appropriation for $128,205 for CNRE steep grant transfer station.
So state grants, called STEEP grants, small town economic something program, and designed for projects just like this. We are up at our transfer station. There's a shack up there. We have a couple town employees that work out of there, and also there's the scale that's built into that whole system, so we can charge the right amount for people that bring refuse trash up to the landfill. This is our money. It's money we sent to Hartford. We're getting a piece of it back. of $128,000. And Bill Shear is here tonight. It's his project. He designed the facility and the replacement facility, and he can answer any questions. Obviously, we're getting grant money. We'd like to accept it and use these funds instead of local taxpayer funding to do just that. Bill, do you want to fill in any blanks that we might need to fill in?
Sure. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Sure. I think you can just do it.
Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, as you can see, our transfer station scale house is extremely old and small. I got to figure out how to. Oh, there we go. There are areas of the scale, it's actually a concrete scale, that have collapsed. You can see the patches there. It is reinforced concrete, so it's not a huge danger. When reinforced concrete fails, it fails slowly. But it obviously needs to be replaced, and it needs to be replaced immediately. This is inside the building. Inside this building, it's very small. The heating system is poor. The air conditioning is a window unit. There are no restrooms, so the guys have to go off-site to use the restroom. There is no water on site, so it's lacking many amenities. So our plan is to replace the existing scale with a new scale, a much better design that we hopefully will get at least 50 years out of it, and come up with a better designed building to accommodate the workers there, which includes a septic system and tie into water. As you can see here, we've come up with a rough design that has a restroom, a break area. They'll have a teller window so that when vehicles come up, they can actually interact with the vehicle through the window without going outside. With regards to COVID, that's a good thing because we can limit our exposure to people-to-people contact. And also this will have windows on most sides so that if you're familiar with the transfer station, there's something going on 360 degrees everywhere around that transfer station house. So they'll have a good visibility of everything going on and can conduct business and do a much better and more comfortable job with all these amenities that we'll be supplying for them. And basically, this is our rough budget right now. We have the steep grant of $128,205. As part of the steep grant, a required public works match of $20,000, which is in another account already appropriated, was required per the grant, and the balance will be paid from previously appropriated LoCIP. The goal will be to any extra funds we will not spend out of the LoCIP account, and we will fully expend the steep grant and the public works money that we already have. I can answer any questions you have. Would you like me to stop the share now or stay on it?
I'm good with stopping the share because we have the materials in front of us.
Okay.
Great. Bill, great job on this presentation. I really appreciate all the details that you provided to us.
Thank you.
And, you know, the spreadsheet is very clear about where the money is going to go and where it's coming from. Just really excellent job. So thank you. I just had two questions for Anna, and it's more of an accounting thing. What expense line item is the 20 grand coming out of in Public Works? What account number?
Did you know what Joe's plan for that was?
I think it was going to be transfer station supplies or something similar to that. It was definitely a transfer station line item.
Yeah. You know what, Camille? It's going to be a line item in Department 317. I can make a note and follow up with Joe in the morning to let you know and send it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was just curious because I didn't really see anything that had like a lot of money left over, but maybe it's just maybe you'll pull from a few accounts. And the LoCIP account number, we have two LoCIP accounts, but there's only one with funds in it, correct?
So if you look at the report that was included in your packets,
Mm-hmm.
So it would be on page 2 of 3, and the account number is 3270-045-019-050, East Lyme Transfer Station Improvements, 102,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking somewhere else. So it's page 2, 3270.
045,
Uh-huh.
019, 050.
050, East Lyme Trans, okay, for 102.
So when we started to use CNRE fund for purposes of our LoCIP projects, I designed the chart of accounts to be what our state grant numbers are. So like, for example, just to point that out for you. So with the state, our grant number is 045-019-050. In their records, that's the East Lyme Transfer Station project. So this kind of made sense, sense to do it that way.
Yep. No, that's fine. I just wasn't sure what account it was going to be coming out of. I like to just track these things if I
Nope,
can.
that's fine.
Yep. Nope, that's good. Thank you. And Bill, when will the work be scheduled?
We'd like to do it as soon as possible. We have not got the contract for the money from the state back yet. I don't really know what's going on up there. Our goal is this spring, but without the contract, and there's still a bunch of hurdles we have to cross. So as soon as possible is the answer.
Okay, and will you go out to bid for this, considering the amount of money?
Yes, it's going to be a mixed bid. We're not exactly sure how it's going to be structured yet, but it'll probably be 2 or 3 different bids.
Very good, thank you. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions for Bill Shearer or Anna Johnson? Okay, seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve a special appropriation in the amount of $128,205, a steep grant award to CNRE Fund 32 to an account to be established titled, quote, improvements to the East Lyme Transfer Station, unquote, which will include a new vehicle scale, new scale house, and all associated work. This grant is to supplement approved use of LoCIP funds, parentheses 102,000, and a required town match of town funds in the amount of $20,000, parentheses Public Works Department 317. This resolution is passed under the guidance of Executive Order 7S with no town meeting and being less than 10% of the current budget.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's unanimous, 500. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
Thanks, you too, Bill.
That's Bill.
Okay, next up.
Next up is a special appropriation and a transfer from the CNRE for the fire marshal and respirators. Our fire marshal is here, John Way, and can explain the difference between a respirator and what we're used to, I call it scuba, but the self-contained breathing apparatus that the firemen wear, which is the big tank. It is like a scuba gear that people swim with, but this is different. They come in after the fire and do their investigations, and it's more appropriate that they have respirators. The SCBA, there were 4 of them in the fire marshal's office, and John was able to, they still have life in them. John donated 2 of them to each fire department, so the request will be lower this year, as we always have that request, the renewal request. So we're not losing money. In fact, what John's doing is saving us money because these are cheaper, but also when we need to replace one because a fire marshal may have had turnover, we have to only replace a little bit of it, not the whole gear. John, why don't you take it from there and again, give us the short story. You've given a lot of material. These folks read through it pretty well. So if you could just give us a short story why this makes sense to buy these.
Well, actually, thank you for having me this evening. Actually, we modeled the purchase after the Connecticut Fire and Explosion and Investigation Unit. They do fire investigations throughout the state all the time, and they used to use the SCBA's, which most people used to use, but due to the weight and also the bottle would only last 30 to 40 minutes, and then you would have to change the bottle out, and the fatigue that on the wearer, and also the profile that you would have to maintain to be able to move around, and constant, retraining, and also the fit of the wearer, depending on how long the bottle would last. So we took a look at what the state was doing, and as the selectman said, we come in after the fire, so we can use the respirator style units. It's much easier to communicate. There's different style masks. You can go with a kind of the nose cone style and use safety glasses, or you can use a full face, depending on what the wearer is more comfortable with. When we change out employees, we're only talking about changing out a mask, which is easy. Training is relatively much easier. The amount of work time is up to 8 hours, as opposed to only 30 minutes with the SCBA bottle on. So, any questions?
Questions?
I will say that Mark answered my questions right up front. I was wondering what you guys have been using, and
Yeah.
good to know they're being donated to the firehouses. Yeah, I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any more questions for John Way? Yes, Peter.
Is this new technology, or is this just,
It's been around for a couple of years. And we talked to the state fire marshal's office, and we asked how they like them, and obviously if they've had good luck. And they said, yes, it's become much more cost efficient and also easier for the wearers to use.
yeah, that's clear. Okay, good. So, looks a lot easier to wear.
It is a lot more lightweight, and it's really good for, the applications are really endless for anybody who has to wear any kind of respirator device. And I was thinking about talking about Jojoba Goff, if they had any need for respiratory equipment for water and sewer employees or anything else, this might be an option for them as well, because again, they really can do a lot of different applications.
Yeah, good.
Interesting.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
John, you're getting 3 of these units. How many are used at one time?
Well, right now we have myself as the full-time fire marshal and then 2 deputies, so that's why we're getting 3.
But say at a single fire, how many of these go out for one fire? All 3?
Well, depending on the size of the event, it might be 2 or 3 of us there. So each person would have a respirator.
Okay, what's the projected life of these?
I know the state has had it for a few years, and really the units themselves, I don't know if there's been a life expectancy to them, but the cartridges can last up to a couple of years, all based on the amount of use, and the batteries and the units are rechargeable themselves. They don't really have a shelf life like the SCBA's do.
Okay, all right, thanks.
It's personal gear, John, too. We issue them per, like we don't take the fire apparatus with the firemen wear and trade it back and forth. It's issued to people. This is also issued to a fire marshal. Going in their mouth, and there's a hygiene situation there too.
Okay.
Yeah, I know where you're going. Makes sense.
Yes, John. Are you looking to get the full face or the half face mask with goggles for these?
Right now, we're looking at the half face, where you would wear the mask and then you would wear safety glasses. I myself, right now, I have safety glasses with readers in the bottom of them. So using that, it's a little bit more to look at things in detail, and they tend to not fog up as easily.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then for the fit testing, is that something that you do internally, or do you have to have a vendor help you with that?
I'm going to check with I'm not sure if the fire department has their own, what they call a port account machine. If not, there are vendors in the area. It's just a matter of taking the mask, and then they just you get the adapter from Clean Space to the supplier to set up the fit testing.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Looks good.
Thank you.
Any further questions for John Way? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll do it. Move to approve a special appropriation to transfer in the amount of $2,412 in cnre Fund 32 from account number 32-70-300-500-999 in parentheses Townline Projects to an account to be established titled PS-F Marshall Respiratory Protection Equipment.
Okay, thanks, John Birmingham. I'll second that. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Looks like it's unanimous. Karen, 500. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, next up, special appropriation for the fire marshal's salary, 1912.50.
Madam Chair, we're going to miss our 1 hour goal, but we're moving along quite efficiently tonight. And I think we all appreciate that from one another. I'm going to give this to Anna because this is just a miscalc or just not putting the money in, and she can explain it better than I can. This is actually Mr. Way's salary, in that he's entitled to cost of living last year, but the timing was off and we didn't calculate it into the budget.
Yeah. So what happened is when Mr. Way was hired last year, the budget for the fire marshal had already been done. And so when the COLAs were awarded for this fiscal year, I just missed putting it in that budget. And so, this is really to make it right.
Okay, I did have a couple of questions. John, please don't be discouraged. Salaries are public information. I tend to have a lot of questions about these. So I'll start with Anna. I understand what happened because we broke out one department into two, 214 and 224.
Yes.
So the prior year's budget was 91 grand. And you pulled out 10 grand for the stipend for the police chief, right? For public
That's
safety?
state and emergency management, yes.
Right. So that would have meant that the fire marshal salary was 81?
The previous fire marshal, yes.
So the starting salary was 85,000.
So when John Way started, his salary was 85 flat.
Correct.
So we didn't pull the 10,000 out of the fire marshal's budget to fund the public safety department. Because that would have been 95.
Right. When the budget was first put together as one department, it was 95 because the two salaries were in the one line item, and that's kind of a a carry forward because at one point in time the fire marshal also carried the added responsibility of emergency management director. So at the time, so then when we started with a police chief, rather than having the fire marshal have those added responsibilities, the added responsibilities were given to the police chief.
Okay. So the 85,000 was the beginning salary. The 2.25% COLA brings it to 86.9. It looks like Mr. Way's been being paid that salary since July 1st. So there's no catch up here, right? He's been paid that since July 1st.
Correct. It's just putting the proper funding in the line item.
Right. So here we are in January. I'm just wondering why this is the first time we're seeing this, like 5 months later.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a matter of, when I got to putting it on the agendas to properly fund it.
Okay. Right. So that's all the questions I have. Does anybody else have any questions for Anna? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to appropriate and transfer $1,912.50 from account number 01-01-120-200-500, parentheses contingency, to account number 01-25-224-100-211, parentheses fire marshal, for the 2020/2021 cost of living increase.
Yeah. Thanks, Ann Santora, for the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
Thanks, John Birmingham. Any further discussion? I do have one further question, Anna. So when I'm looking at the Department 224, the part-time fire marshal budget is $65,000, and we've only used 40% of that so far. Why don't we take these funds from that account, just make an interdepartmental transfer versus pulling it from contingency? Because we're not going to, I mean, by looking at these reports, we're not going to use that money in the part-time fire marshal line item by the end of the year.
John, do you feel comfortable with that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I do have, actually, I have an upcoming medical procedure where I'm going to be out for a little bit. So where I'm going to have coverage 24/7 for a little bit. So that which was unexpected on my part. Plus, I haven't used any vacation time yet this year as well. So I don't know. It's kind of unknown at this point. I don't know how much you're talking about pulling out, but I don't. Otherwise, I probably have to go back to add money to the account.
Well, I think I would be in favor of pulling it from the part-time fire marshal account, and then if we run short, then pull from contingency. I would feel more comfortable doing it that way because it's substantially under budget. So even if we're talking a couple of weeks vacation and leave, I think we're still going to track under budget there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we don't even need a motion then. We don't need action. It's interdepartment, right?
Right, so my question is on the procedure, should the board just vote it down and then we do a transfer, or just take no action on it and it falls off the agenda?
Either way.
I just want to make sure,
But
like.
with
the
their
policy
blessing, either
procedure is
way.
correct.
Right.
Right, and that'll come to us in the last month of the fiscal season, right? When we approve all of those interdepartment transfers after the fact.
Right, at some point it'll happen.
Yeah. Well, we can vote on it. That would be my preference. I think it's premature to pull money from a contingency account or savings account, you know. Yeah, I really would like to leave that intact as much as possible. Yes, Rich Steele.
Yeah, I think rather than voting on it and us voting something down, which looks negative, that we just remove it from the agenda, and that if the intra-department transfer of funds is allowed without us taking any action, I think that's a more expedient fashion.
So the only procedural issue I see is that a motion is on the floor and there's been a second. So we have to complete the motion by voting on it.
Oh,
Or
okay.
rescind the motion.
You can rescind the motion.
You could
right?
rescind the motion.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
And that would work.
Yeah.
Can I move to rescind the motion?
Or does the person that made it have to
Person who
rescind
made
it?
Oh, okay.
And will rescind her motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I just have one question. I mean, Board of Selectmen also voted on this, correct? So does that change our calculus in any way here? You have something hanging out there that I guess we didn't approve.
That happens all the time.
That happens all the time. I'm just thinking out loud here,
Yeah, no,
thinking back.
You guys change numbers all the time, and then we have to go back.
Okay.
I think
I'm
you're
just-
okay, and the bottom line is the intent is clear on the
Yes.
record of what we intend to do, and I think that's most important.
Right.
And we certainly don't want John's payroll check to be bouncing mid-June. So one way or the
Right.
other, we're going to make our obligation to you. full.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, so it'll be as if we never had this conversation. I will move to rescind the motion concerning item number 5C. Guess we just need a second.
I'll second it because I did it in motion.
Yes, perfect. Okay, terrific. And we don't need to vote. So this motion just, I don't want to say dies here. We might see it in the future. I don't know what the correct language is,
You just
but
erased
no
18 minutes.
motion. What's that, Mark?
We just erased 18 minutes of tape. Is that what we did? We just, beat this up.
Wasn't that long. No motion tonight on this. Okay. With that, we will move on. And again, John, just so you understand, if we run into a situation where we need to pull from contingency, we'll see you again when that happens.
Okay. Well,
All
thank you
right.
for your time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
very much
John.
for your
Have a
time.
Good night.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, with that, we will move on to a funding commitment, CNRE Fund 32 for a corridor study. Mark?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to do two things at once here. And I lost my paper. Oh, I have it in front of me. My apologies. This is something that can, well, you know, going back to last municipal election, a lot of people were talking about sidewalks in town, and especially connecting Flanders to the Niantic side. And we've been talking about bike paths, and we've been talking about sidewalks, and we've been talking about some people call it dead man's curve around Gorton Pond, around that house with a leaning retaining wall. And when we've lost several lives at that location, we're at a place now where the state has said, and of course that's a state road, so we can't just say, let's go fix it. But the state has acknowledged the need for us to go fix it and has awarded through the Council of Governments this grant that pays for a study to determine the work required, what is possible there, and et cetera. This is based on bike and sidewalks. These grants get awarded to places that are in desperate need for bike paths along the road and sidewalks. So the stretching of the road, the widening of the road. And we've been awarded this grant. The technical size of the study is from the high school all the way down to the new park on Main Street at the end of 161. But really the concentration is going to be really where the Ilianos, where the lanes get down to one lane, and because all that's going to be redone by the state project that will come in and redo all the on and off ramps. So this will be integrated with that project. This study will be integrated with that project and keep that and take that into account. But it really is going around Gordon Pond and up to the East Patagonia intersection that is most in need of this study. We were awarded more than we thought we would be awarded. We were actually given an extra $50,000. I think we requested 200,000 and we got 250,000. So there is an obligation of the town to pay for 10%. So we're coming to you with a $25,000 request. It's something we've been planning for a while. Frankly, every day I hear somebody use COVID as an excuse, but this is another COVID excuse thing where it fell off the radar at the Council of Governments. And frankly, I don't think Connecticut DOT had been moving much on any of their grant approvals. But we're ready to go, and this study will start very soon. It's administered by not our town staff. It's not money that's going to come to the town. It's money that goes to the COG. And they hire a contractor with the permission of the state to then go out and do this study. And the report goes back to the state and to the town. So we have a piece in this. We have a say in this. We'll be able to provide information for this. And of course, this benefits us most importantly. And it's probably the #1 place in town. And there's plenty of other places that could use this upgrade. This being a state road, this is how the process works. Nothing gets improved at the state without one of these corridor studies. So good news coming up in the next several years. But we start with the steep grant, not the steep grant, the corridor study, and we do need to get approval from you folks tonight for the $25,000.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Does anybody have any questions about this corridor? Yes, John?
I have two. First one, on that curve where the retaining wall is,
Yeah,
property owner goes right up to that retaining wall.
yeah.
How is he going to be taken care of? Is it going to be something to do with eminent domain?
John, the study might say they build the road out into the pond. I think that's unlikely. It might be an eminent domain, and probably there's no better example of actually eminent domain is for the good of the public, for the whole public, of maybe having to take that house, maybe another one. Yeah.
And who establishes the value?
That's all. It's a state. It would be, and this is first of all, this is just a study to look at whether that would need to be done. If this study goes to an actual construction project, it would be the state that would buy that. It would be the state that pays for that, determines that, creates the value. The value is market rate plus 10% or something like that. The eminent domain, and by the way, there's been eminent domain offers or negotiations going on in our town. The Mobile Station and the Starlight Motel have been already approached, and I think just those two, because that project is going to happen. I mean, God knows where the funding's going to come from at the state, no tolling and all that, but that's happening, and negotiators are already working with those two businesses.
Okay, the second question is, if it
Yes.
goes to the other side of the road where the pond is,
Yeah.
and you have to build I'll say a walkway over the water, cement, wood, whatever, does DEP get involved with that?
If the state DOT would work with the DEEP to negotiate that, but our original plan was maybe we build a walkway over the water, but maybe with that house, and again, lots of speculation here. We just want the approval of the study so they can come back and tell us what they want to do. But if there's a taking of a house or two around that corner, then maybe the road moves closer into that hill and we don't have to go out over the water.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
pure speculation and guessing, and
Yeah.
frankly,
Well, all that is taken care of down the road.
yeah, lots of stuff down the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else with questions on the project or the request? Mark, I just had a couple of questions. If we approve this tonight, when would the study commence? And how long would it take?
It's moving quickly now. Springtime is when we'd like to issue the contract, when the Council of Governments would issue the contract, and I've been told it's a 6-month project, start to finish.
And do you provide objectives up front, or is this a consulting firm that just completely comes up with their vision of what it should be? I mean, I know I saw a step in here about community involvement, but I guess, do they have goals and objectives, like East Lyme wants a bike path, East Lyme wants sidewalks, or they just gonna come up with?
That's baked into the application, actually, that we put together with the Council of Governments and Kate Rattan, who works up at the Council of Governments. That it was all part of, the corridor study, is the safetiness of the road improvements, but also bike path possibilities of bike path and definitely sidewalks. And that is, again, kind of the core of the whole project to begin with.
And what is the deliverable will be a study and recommendations. How far will the recommendations go? If they come up with this grand, are they going to come up with a design? Is that part of the deliverable? Or is it just going to be, recommendations in bullet form? Or
It's not engineering. It's not engineering. It's what's needed, what the safety problems are, what the pinch points are, what the possibility of putting in a sidewalk right now is, which is 0 around certain areas in bike lanes, and maybe the need for them to connect north and south part of town, and why that's important. That would be the town involvement. It wouldn't be engineering. It wouldn't be the feasibility of does the house have to go, or do we build it out into the pond? Not that. It would be reporting back to the state. You have a deficient and defective road system here that is not operating. It gets a grade F or whatever they use, and it goes back to the state, and they observe that and then try to make a correction. And this is the problem.
and it would be on their dime because it's a
Yes.
state road, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So we should not, the taxpayers of East Lyme should not be concerned about whether these recommendations that are going to come forward are going to cost the town $250,000 or $250 million, because it won't be on our dime, correct?
Probably our all in this $25,000 we're asking for tonight is probably the last dime that we'll have to spend on this. If anything, the police will be hired and be making money on this project should it ever happen, because we'll need a lot of police presence as they rebuild that road.
How many other towns in the SCOG have applied and been awarded this? Are there a lot of corridor
Yeah,
studies for different towns?
I'm going to say generally about 3 of these a year get awarded.
Okay.
My 7 years on the COG, about 3 a year on average, some more, some less, depending on the size of the project. But this is.
So in the past, when these studies, money has been awarded for these studies, can you think of a project that's actually been implemented based on the recommendation that came forward? You see where I'm going with this? I hate. I mean, I know it's not our money, 250 grand. But to have a product at the end of the day just sitting on somebody's shelf is kind of,
I off the top of my head, I know there's been improvements on Hartford Turnpike in front of the Crystal Mall, but down further, and they've made improvements, and I think that came from a COG corridor study a long time ago. There was something up in Norwich that was done last year, and I think it's somewhere behind the hospital. There's a road back there where the furniture store is, and I believe that's a state road, and there was something done there as well. But off the top of my head, I can't. Downtown Ledyard is a state road, and there was many improvements done there. Steep grants, but also the corridor study with the widening of the road and the bike paths. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Any other questions from any other member?
Yeah.
Yes, Ann.
Thanks, Mark. So in terms of consistency with our POCD, maybe that your discussion here with Camille, maybe that's a little bit that we need to discuss in some detail, that this definitely is consistent with, I guess, the most recent version of that POCD. So it does reflect all that input, whether not just the Planning Commission or Gary Goschel, but the public's desire to, to rectify this dangerous situation and to start putting in, more positive, infrastructure, whether it's the sidewalk or the bike lanes or whatever. So I think, important maybe to keep in mind that that's a lot of the, sort of the backstory to this, I guess.
And a long goal of the town to marry up put at least sidewalks in and connect the north and south part of town. Beth Hogan did a piece of sidewalk on that road. And the plan was just to do a little bit of sidewalk every year and try to connect, but then you get to Gordon Pond and you say, what do you do? And then, and then that is the main artery for people in Niantic to get out to the highway. There's other ways, but that is the main artery. And of course, we know what that does in the summertime. It backs up. People trying to visit our town in our events, especially. So.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay. Hearing no one and seeing no hands, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll take it. Move to support a commitment of funds letter in the amount of $25,000 and authorize the first selectman to sign a letter for the Route 161 corridor study grant made available by federal program funds through CTDOT to be administered by SCCOG. The source of the funds to be appropriated once the final award is granted are in CNRE Fund 32, account 32-70-300-500-999. Parentheses, townwide projects.
I'll second that, Karen. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We have another unanimous vote, 500. Thank you. All right. One last piece of new business this evening is to accept the donation portion of the Girl Scout camp.
Normally, I would be very worried. Thank goodness we put the puff piece at the end, because going in with 4 wins and no losses would make me question or be nervous. This is a housekeeping item, folks. The Girl Scout camp was sold. It was sold to a local man who is trying to get it developed into multiple houses. There is some discussion about trying to buy some of it to make it open space. That's a question for a later day. And the price tag, we're far off, so I'm not sure that will ever happen. But there's a piece, as you come around the Girl Scout camp and around the lake and you start going up the hill, it's back behind some houses back there. The Cyborgs and Esther Williams live, well, maybe I shouldn't say that in a public meeting, but it's up there, and it's 8 acres. It's not much, but a former landowner, homeowner up there, donated it to the Girl Scout camp decades ago and said the only caveat, that the deed restriction on it, is it can never be developed. So the Girl Scout camp was kind of a little puzzled, and I don't think it's contiguous to the Girl Scout camp. I think it just sits next to it, but it might not have connected to the actual parcel. But the bottom line is it's being donated as open space to the town. It doesn't have a lot of value. It doesn't connect, but it could someday with some other open space back on that hill that goes back to the Darrow Pond area, which could connect. It does have some frontage, like a driveway sliver, down to Patagonia Road, Upper Patagonia Road. But anytime we buy land or sell land or accept land, we need to get approval from the Board of Finance, because there could be a tax situation here, right? Something could be coming off the tax rolls. And while this is a sliver of land of 8 acres, it could be 800 acres, and you'd be going, what happened to our grand list next year? Well, this was never on our grand list. And that's important to know too. A nonprofit owned it. It was donated for open space. We're getting 0 tax money for it. It's being donated to us. We will be the keeper of that land, and it will remain open space for our great-great-great-grandkids. And maybe someday it will connect. And so we're asking for your bookkeeping approval on this. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the first selectman?
Peter?
Any structures on the land?
No structures on the land.
Okay, good, good.
Good question.
I don't ask many, but
Any other questions from any other member?
Does the town assume any costs for maintenance of the land? Are there any maintenance fees?
No, it's just open space land. I
Right.
mean, you could say someday we might need to have a forestry group go in there and clear the lumber, but this is a small sliver. I mean,
Oh,
we
okay.
have hundreds of acres that sit like that too. There wouldn't be any increases in our liability insurance. It's just a piece of land, and yes, our liability insurance would cover that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Those are good questions, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Most important, no tax impact. That's what we're here for, is to run the numbers through.
Right.
Looks good to me. So if there's no further questions, if somebody would like to make the motion.
Please.
Oh, go ahead. Whereas the Girl Scouts of Connecticut, Inc. is the owner of 8.52 plus or minus acres of land on Upper Patagonia Road in the town of East Lyme, more particularly described in Schedule A attached to, and whereas said land is subject to a permanent restriction that the premises shall be preserved in perpetuity as open space land, and whereas the Girl Scouts of Connecticut, Inc. desires to donate said land to the town of East Lyme. Now therefore it is resolved as recommended by the Board of Selectmen and subject to a Planning Commission 8-24 review, the Board of Finance hereby approves the donation of said land and authorizes the first selectman to accept a deed from the Girl Scouts of Connecticut Incorporated.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thanks, John Birmingham. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, another unanimous 500. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. It's very cold out there, so.
Right,
use an extra
thanks, Mark.
blanket.
Have a good night. With that, next on our agenda is old business. Is there any old business to discuss? Yes, Anna Johnson.
I just wanted to let you know, I sent Joe a text and asked him what account he planned to use in the Public Works budget for that $20,000 subsidy. And he plans to use the road reconstruction account.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Anna. Any other business, any other questions lingering from prior meetings? Okay, seeing none, there is one attendee. If you would like to address the board this evening, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. Okay, looks like there are no comments from the public. With that, we'll move on to board comments. Anybody like to address each other this evening? Okay, seeing no hands, there are no board comments. I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Thanks, John Birmingham. A second?
second.
Thanks, Peter DeRosa. With that, all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Great. Great meeting tonight. Thanks, everyone. Sorry it was a little
Thank
bit.
you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.